Now we're going to move on to Saeed Abdullah Shahonkni from Washington State University. Saeed is a PhD candidate in the Language, Literacy and Technology Education Program at Washington State University, Pullman. He is interested in the process of second language socialization, SLS, in virtual worlds, VWS. Saeed.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. It's great to be presenting my research here. So as you know, my research is about the process of second language socialization in a multiplayer online role-playing game. I start off with laying out my theoretical framework, and then I'll talk about the MMOG and my study, and finally a question and answer session, and finally I'll point out to my future works in this area. So as you know, there are ways of approaching second language acquisition. We usually either approach the process so traditionally or cognitively, mostly in a Chomskyan way, or socioculturally, which is about the, which is about how languages are learned in social contexts. So this study was motivated by a sociocultural perspective, which is second language socialization. So second language socialization is the process by which L2 learners socialize into the norms of the sociocultural community, the target community. So, and they gain membership, they gain legitimacy and linguistic competence through interaction with the other community members. So as part of this theoretical framework, I also used communities of practice, which is also a sociocultural entity. A COP is a group of people gathered around a shared task, a communal goal, and they regularly communicate towards accomplishing it. So, and basically the community operates based on three elements. Which is, one of them is the domain, which is the task that the participants or the community members are gathering around. In this research, for example, it was a game. So it's a community, members get together, and practice. So members do activities that it's part of the group norms. So also part of the community of practice, so another framework was informed in this study, which is legitimate peripheral participation. So based on this theory, also members of the community gain legitimacy through interaction with the other community members. So their knowledge from marginal becomes central. So through the community practices that the members are involved in. So what is a massively multiplayer online game? So as you may know, and you may have played online games in your free times. So they are online settings with users collaboratively accomplishing tasks. They're playing a game, and they could remotely get connected to the game platform from different locations and accomplish, a certain number of quests and tasks in a community of virtual learners, virtual players. So what they share with language learning is that in both settings, the participants are mastering a semiotic domain. So a language learner is mastering a semiotic domain, which is the language. A gamer is also mastering a semiotic domain, which is the language of the game. So they are participating in a community, both of them. They are in a process of committed learning. So a gamer needs to constantly learn to survive in the challenging world they're playing in, and a language learner is also trying to survive, trying to gather more linguistic knowledge, to communicate, to survive in the new world in a way. So both members, both participants also develop an identity, a linguistic identity or a gaming identity. So we're going to talk about these in a few minutes. Also, this learning process is ongoing for both participants, and there is no psychosocial moratoriums involved, which is shocking physical stresses resulting from failures for a gamer. And various modalities are involved too in a game. There are images, videos, texts. For second language learners, also the same. And also, people through interactions with different community members, they develop a cultural, a multicultural model of living, which they can be found in both online and offline settings. So then in this study, I used the platform of a game called Stronghold Kingdoms to see how members of the game, specifically one language learner, how this specific learner and how generally members develop the identity of competent members of the community. So what was interesting, what interested me was a non-native English speaker developing the identity of a competent member who is leading other native English speakers. And I wanted to know how it happened and if language was a barrier in this process. So I used a narrative inquiry, which was collecting the stories of this specific gamer and the other native English speakers around him in this so-called community of practice, in this faction. And I used records of the game, interviews, and focus groups to answer the research questions. So the first research question was, what are the linguistic norms and practices in the game community of practice where non-native English speakers become legitimate participants? And to answer these questions, I needed to analyze records. And the records in this game were forum exchanges between the faction community. So as you may know, in these games, there are factions, people interact over factions, they coordinate tactics and strategies. So the first step was to analyze all those interactions. So I needed to code them, categorize them, and thematize them to find out what the norms and practices in these COPs were. The second question was, how does the game community shape the non-native English speakers' identity? And to answer this question, I also needed to conduct interviews with the first participant and also conduct focus groups. So let's just watch a short trailer of the game to see what context what setting we entered as part of this study.
Greetings, sir. Your kingdom awaits. Stronghold Kingdoms. Your village is one of 1,000 others. Make it the pride of the parish. Plan and construct your settlements to maximize their potential. Use special cards to your advantage. Tailor-make your personal avatar. Explore new disciplines to gain the upper hand. Everything from salt working to siege mechanics. Hundreds of quests and achievements to challenge and reward you. Gather your forces, fight for glory, and dominate the land. Can you handle the pressure? Build the ultimate stronghold. Ready your defenses. and prepare for a medieval strategy experience unlike any other. Stronghold Kingdoms has just begun.
Okay. Okay. So no battle has just begun, by the way. And I played this game. So a disclaimer here: this game is not what we want language educators to use in their classes. It was just a game to test out the theory and see how the community helps the process of second language learning. And yeah, certainly we need to make games for second language socialization and learning. So anyways, so as you saw, this community is a 2 or 3-dimensional setting. So there are social activities involved, and all the gamers need to just be involved in these. They need to trade, they need to vote, they need to farm, they need to fight together. These are the communal goals and the communal practices that link all these members. So there are various communication channels in this game. There are in-game textual chat, mail, forum, and out-of-the-game audio chat servers that gamers usually use to communicate with each other. So the communities of practice in this game are parishes, are factions, and houses. There are various quests to complete. There is a rewarding mechanism in place. People need to rise through the ranks, and there are currently 76 game worlds in this game, and 11 of which are English-speaking worlds. So I entered one of these worlds and played alongside these members, the participants of the study, to find out what the norms were. So the participants in this study, as you may see, were one competent non-native English speaker. So he had 5 years of experience playing the game. He had the total number of villages available to a player, 40 villages. He had accomplished 196 quests, many awards. So he was at the final rank of the game. So this person was the focal participant in this narrative inquiry. So I needed to approach this person to see how he has been able to accomplish many goals to be known as a competent member of this community. So, and there were also 3 other members in this study. They were native English speakers. They were also, they were somehow developing, but they were not as accomplished as the leader of the group, Emil, a participant from Serbia. So the results of theme analysis and text analysis showed that 32%, almost 33% of the game messages were all about communication and coordination of actions. So 23% were about gaming skills. So about 17% were about conduct, how a gamer should play, and also 15% about dedication to the game, and almost 13% to real life activities and issues. So out of 1,241 messages that I analyzed. So, and there were also small codes in this overall setting. So the slides are online. You may also check them out. So all these codes and categories and then themes were analyzed, and they led to an interview protocol that I used to approach this specific person. And through the interview, I found that a competent player is good at these themes, so that the person, the participant confirmed the results of the coding and said, so if you're good at these, then you are a competent player of the community. Also, he asserted that communicating with other people in this game was the main factor that drove him towards this game. And also he adopted many strategies and tactics. So like he used Google Translate to be able to communicate with people he wanted to the other gamers. Or he also looked at the broad picture instead of looking at individual structures and expressions to be able to communicate. Also, activeness in the game was a matter of atmosphere of the game. Through wars, they need to be acting more quickly, more actively, but in peacetime, there were less activities. And also, this game helped Emil, the non-native English speaker of the game, to develop social skills, that is, being able to communicate with other members, which is a good thing in the world of language acquisition. So, and the reason not to leave the game was a feeling of belonging, a feeling of connectedness, which did not allow people to leave and quit the game. So also talking to the focus group, several issues emerged. So that usually So the gamers were connected. They all needed to be playing together. The language was not a barrier as much as the language skills were. The gaming skills were. So the players, as long as the leader was able to lead the faction in an appropriate manner, so they were fine with the language. They could make sense of the words that he was using or the inaccurate language forms that he was using. So, which is another thing about gaming, which is interesting from a second language learning perspective. So, and this gave the person a feeling of ease and a feeling of, openness to make errors, to make mistakes, and still be perceived as a person in the community. So, and gaming was an interdependent relationship between everybody involved in the game. So, and this is also another important thing about these vibrant participatory settings. So I conclude this presentation with a community of practice in this setting, so enabled the non-native English speaker to form the identity of a competent player by apprenticing to the norms of the community. Also, the participant developed a working, functional language proficiency to be able to be communicating with other community members. And the native English speaker also facilitated the process of second language learning by allowing the leader to make mistakes and still be the leader of the group because his gaming skills allowed him to. And they needed to, so it was an ecological relationship between all of them. So they needed the person's, the leader's skills to progress in the game, and at the same time they knew that this person did not have the required language skills to communicate with them. So there was a balance. So everybody gained in this relationship. And this study specifically also provided further evidence on the affordances of multiplayer online games for second language socialization. Thank you very much.
And do we have any questions? Any questions for Saeed? This very interesting topic.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I would like to know if you think that this game could be used in a classroom with more students.
Okay.
And what linguistic goals can we set based on the input that this game can give to the students?
Sure. Thank you very much. Well, not this specific game, because this game works on a hierarchical, notion of community development. So maybe this specific game can be used to teach a history class in medieval world, but probably not in second language learning. And there are also other things about it, like language forms which are not acceptable in daily use. There are lots of other non-appropriate forms of language involved. But there are worlds, social communities we can also lead our students to explore, and we can adopt these educational multiplayer online games in our classes. And there are certainly gains in that. So we have the it makes the learning process an engaging process. There are interactions, there are feedbacks, provisions, and so these altogether can help the process of learning, if we consider learning a sociocultural process.
Any other questions?
Thank you for your presentation. So I was curious, coming more from an ideal perspective, where would you see this going in the future, and what, if you could, what is the perfect gaming environment that would allow non-native English speakers to gain language proficiency?
Okay, sure, thanks. So as to your first question, I have two more slides. Thanks for mentioning this. So from this narrative inquiry, right now I'm working on an ethnographic case study. So the same setting, but here the goal is different. Collecting field notes about how the members of this community specifically are acting. So this specific faction that I was part of, they revolted against the world. So they were banished from the world, and then the world ended, and they entered a new world, and they got together, all of them. So this connectedness was with them until they found their own world again. So I'm with them right now. I'm collecting notes and seeing how things are going, and what kept all of these members together. And this time there are 8 non-native English speakers and 2 native English speakers out of all of that group. So, and the data sources are observations, records and artifacts, and interviews also. So if you're interested, we can share the results of that study. And another thing I'm right now involved in is creating a psychological measure based on the data analysis presented at the beginning of the slideshow, the text analysis. I'm creating an inventory of language socialization in social settings, multiplayer online game settings. So as to your second question, is there any safe environment we can explore or we can have our students be working in? I'm not sure. But through this research and research like this, we can come up with the principles that we need to be adopting in creating such online settings, such safe settings. But there are many out there with different levels of safety you may explore. And we can always be in touch and talk about them.
Well, thank you very much. This ends our first session. Thank you very much to our graduate presenters. A nice way to kick it off. And if you wish to contact them, their email addresses are in the app or in the book. And thank you very much. Hope you come back to sessions here or the electronic village, which is located at the very end of this corridor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.